Now, before we get underway, allow me to tell you about the panel experts which we have here for you tonight. Leading the case for our proposition bench, we will be joined by Greg Smith, the Chief Executive of Public UK. Alongside him, we have Ken Ritchie, founder of the Labour Party's Movement for a Republic. And on the opposition side, we're going to be joined by former BBC Royal Correspondent Michael Cole and the Royal Commentator Richard Fitzwilliams. So that leaves me with absolutely nothing else to do other than to ask for a massive round of applause to welcome in tonight's speaker. Have introduced our speakers. Allow me to tell you about the format of tonight's debate. We have 4 speakers, 2 on the side of proposition and 2 on the side of opposition. We will start tonight with a vote on conscience, and then each speaker is going to be making an uninterrupted opening speech of up to 2 to 6 minutes, outlining their case for tonight's debate. Following this, we will enter a period of cross-examination. That's what I'm going to take a step back. We're going to allow our speakers to go head-to-head as they debate one another's arguments. Then it will be your opportunity to get involved with our audience Q&A, with the best question winning this fantastic bottle of wine here. And then following a roundabout, it gets its whole approval. Following the half an hour questioning which we will have tonight, one speaker from each side will summarise their argument in an uninterrupted 2-minute closing speech. And then we will take our final vote of the night. No abstentions at that point, so you really will have to get off the fence and vote either way. So that is what we will do tonight. The winning side will be declared and the wine will be presented to the best question. So let's get underway with our first vote of the evening, the vote for conscience. At this point, you can abstain. So all those in favour of the motion that aye, please raise your hands now. Counting me slow, I am conscious of you. And the no, those against the motion. And those abstaining. So, at the current state of play, the noes are just about in the lead, about 6 more than the ayes, and the abstentions are 55. So, plenty to play for our speakers tonight. And without further ado, I'd like to invite the first speaker to the side of the commission to outline their case here.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for coming. Hello, fellow citizens. Well, it would be nice if I could really begin that way. We're sort of citizens. We are not real citizens. We can talk about Britain as being our country, because after all, it's the place that we live. But we don't actually own it. So we're just sort of citizens. The country is ultimately belongs to the king. He protects it with his royal regiments, he's got his royal air force, he's got his royal navy that sails in his majesty's ships. It's all paid for by the taxes that we pay to his majesty's customers and size. It's, if you don't pay, you're likely to hear from the Crown Prosecution Service, and they might want to lock you up in one of His Majesty's prisons. The royal branding is everywhere. You even find it in packets of soap plates and tins of meat. Of course, the king doesn't run the country in the way that it used to happen in the past. That is left to His Majesty's government, and at least in theory, it's supposed to be held in check by His Majesty's loyal opposition. Now, we at least can choose the politicians, but there's a catch. Before they can do any work for us, they have got to swear their allegiance, not to us, or to the constituency, or to the constitution, but they have got to swear their allegiance to King Charles and his heirs and successors. Now, there are some here who will tell you that this is all wonderful, and we should be very, very grateful for having this institution. Now, certainly, the monarchy can be a little bit of fun. People in a sort of fancy dress and ongoing national pantomime, people with their chests covered with eagles, medals, and all that sort of thing. But why do we perpetuate a delusion that somehow that this is important? It is not. And at the same time, we have got to be cautious. You can't simply dismiss it as some quaint and harmless relic of a bygone age. The monarchy is an institution that is powerful and it has significance. Even in the 21st century, it has got some political power. It doesn't use that political power for arguing for national salaries or anything that would make society better. It uses it for protecting its own financial interests and perpetuating this institution that should have been wound up centuries ago. Now, my problem with the monarchy is not so much what it actually does, it's what it stands for. It symbolizes a society that is divided by rank and status. A society where your class and what your origins were are important. It's a society that conditions us to think that there's nothing wrong with the fact that some people are born rich and powerful, and the rest of us are, well, just ordinary. We have an institution that claims to unite people. Well, Charles can't even unite people as far as anything else. But it claims that the thing that brings us together. How can somebody who personally has worth nearly 2 billion by some estimates, how can he unify people who are struggling to heat their homes? And if you talk about homes, what sort of unity can those who are homeless going to feel with a guy who's got about a dozen houses and hundreds of empty bedrooms? How do we feel about a monarchy that says that yes, it is going to unite? King Charles, at his coronation, did he think he was going to unite people by saying that he was there to preserve the Anglican Church rather than any other religion? Was that a sensible thing to do? Did he really think that by being sprinkled by a little holy oil from Jerusalem that somehow would solve all problems? It's not. It is not the sort of monarchy that we want to have. Unless it changes for the rest of our time, we are going to have a fighting monarchy. And what makes that worse is that a lot of the royal wealth has accumulated over the centuries. A lot of that has come from colonial exploitation and even from profits of slavery. We tend to pull down statues of slave traders. So we have got this situation. I want a different sort of society. I want a society in which the country and its institutions actually belongs to citizens. I want a society in which everybody is regarded as being equal at birth. Of course, people might live their lives in different directions, but at all stages, as citizens, they should be regarded as equal. As citizens, they should all be regarded as having an equal respect. It doesn't mean that you don't have politicians and parliaments, but politicians and parliaments have then got to be accountable to the people that they serve. It is the people who have got the ultimate authority. And if it is citizens who are stubborn, there is no need, and indeed there is no place for having a stubborn monarch. So I want rid of the monarchy. Not simply because of the monarchy, but because through that, I see that as a way to having a better society for all of us.
For that fine speech, and I would like the first speaker for the opposition. Here.
Parliament is sovereign. The king reigns, he does not rule. That is the Westminster system. We've exported it to successful countries like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the 10 other overseas realms. But the king is the monarch. If it was the settled will of the people of this country, expressed through Parliament, not to have a monarchy, the bill would go to the king, he would sign it, and it would become law, and he would leave the throne. But what we would lose, if that ever happened, would be tremendous. I'm not talking about theory, I'm talking about what I've seen with my Mark 1 eyeball, what I've heard with this big pair of ears, what I've seen and verified. I covered Watergate in America and Washington, 1973-74. The head of state, Richard Nixon, was investigated for high crimes and misdemeanors. The country was paralyzed because the head of state, the commander-in-chief, the font of all honors, was a crook. And the Canadians looked down from the north and said, thank goodness our head of state is not an elected politician, groveling for votes. Above all that, two things kept together the second biggest country in the world, Canada, the Canadian National Railway, and the Queen, who spoke French, which was very important when there was a separatist movement in Canada. 1984, Reagan invaded Grenada because he thought it was turning into another Cuba. The Queen was furious. The next year, and I was there, she went in 1985 to open the Parliament in Georgetown in a white gown, a garter sash with a tiara on, because she believed in democracy for that country, and she was reinforcing it. When Belize was threatened by a nasty little military regime in Guatemala, the Queen didn't go there. But when they gave up their ambitions to usurp that country, she went and supported them. We don't have to go to Central America, much closer to home. I have seen in this country, in Northern Ireland, terrible, terrible slaughter. I was a reporter there. In the 1970s, people were saying Northern Ireland should be hived off as a separate Protestant statelet. Let the Protestants and the Catholics fight it out. This was seriously represented by responsible politicians. The Queen made the most significant speech of her reign in the Guildhall, Jubilee year, Silver Jubilee, and she said, the United Kingdom has been a great benefit to the many peoples of this country. And I cannot forget that I swore to be the Queen of the United Kingdom. And she didn't make those promises to a government, she made them to God. And that was enough for her. And she was telling them, in coded language, if you break up the United Kingdom, you'll have to do it without me because I'll advocate. And that idea went away. We were spared slaughter in Ireland. The Queen went and did something which was magnificent in 2011. The state visit to Ireland. Nobody else could have done it. It wouldn't have mattered if it had been a politician. She was the granddaughter of King George V, who signed the instrument creating the Irish Free State. And she went there, and she went to Croke Park, the scene of the original Bloody Sunday, and she went to the Martyrs' Memorial and she bowed her head. It wouldn't have mattered if it had been Tony Blair. It wouldn't have mattered if it had been anybody else. And even Martin McGuinness, IRA chieftain who had ordered the murder, the assassination of her husband's uncle, Lord Mountbatten, he was impressed when he turned up in white tie and tails to pay tribute to what the Queen had done. These things are important. We don't have a private army that's run by the government of the day. The soldiers swear their loyalty to the Queen. The officers have the Queen's commission. The warrant officers have the Queen's warrant. When they went to the Falkland Islands, which had been invaded by a vile military junta that was arresting students like you, torturing them, and throwing them alive out of helicopters, those men went down there not to get Mrs. Thatcher's bacon out of the oven. They went down there because they were soldiers of the Queen. This is most important. These other factors don't matter. These are the bedrock of our country. And we have 43 monarchies in the world and 149 republics. The monarchies tend to be the happier lands, and I can prove that to you now. Would you rather live in Morocco or Algeria? Would you rather live in Jordan or Syria? Would you rather live in Japan or China? Would you rather live in Australia or Indonesia? Would you rather live in Denmark or Lithuania? If you chose the first of all of those pairs, you chose a monarchy over a republic. And there's nothing intrinsically more modern about a republic. When the republics became hopelessly corrupt in Rome, they replaced them. They replaced them with a monarchy.
And now welcome the second speaker, the Commentator. Here.
That's a great item of history there. I was amused that Ireland managed to avoid bloodshed. I never heard of that. But I seem to remember there being quite a lot of bloodshed in Ireland for many years after the Jubilee. And the notion that Nixon was an advert for monarchy, Nixon resigned and would have been kicked out had he not resigned. He was accountable for his actions and was held to account. Charles was reported to the police on the strength of very strong evidence that he was exchanging honours for cash, and the police were not interested. They dragged their feet for 2 years and then said, no, the CEO not going to win. And Charles remained silent. They didn't even interview him as a witness, let alone a suspect. Andrew, of course, I don't need to go into, but he is facing very serious accusations still. Those accusations have not gone away. The police are not interested. Virginia Jeffrey Roberts at the time reported him to the police in London. They were not interested. And they have raised these issues again. They're not interested. Russell Brand faces accusations which are 20 years old, and the police are interested, as they should be. Andrew faces accusations of the same vintage, and they don't care. They don't want to know. They're not going to investigate. This is a corrupt institution that does not deserve to exist, and it should be abolished. It is corrupt, not just in the sense that they get away with breaking the law and through whatever networks they have, persuade the police to turn a blind eye. It is corrupt in the sense that they abuse public money, week in, week out. Hundreds of millions of pounds of our money being spent on their palatial homes, on their helicopter flights, on their private jets. Not just for their head of state, but for his son, his son's wife, his son's children, his brothers, his sister, their children, aunts and uncles, and all sorts of people hanging on, pretending to be working royals at great expense to the taxpayer. And that is corruption. This corruption doesn't have to be illegal. It is simply abuse of public office for private gain. And you can define the monarchy as abuse of public office for private gain, because that's basically what they do. It is also an institution which demands secrecy. There is a historian, Alexander von Thunderman, who said a few years ago that she had given up trying to research the monarchy, and she would go to research instead an institution that is far more open and less less secretive, the CIA. Other historians and writers have said that they find the monarchy more secretive than MI5. And they use this secrecy to lobby government, not just for their own, for their own personal benefit, to lobby for better, more advantageous financial arrangements, to have themselves exempted even further from the Freedom of Information Act, and also to have exemptions on a whole host of other laws, including race discrimination laws, other employment laws, planning laws, environmental protection laws, and so on, and so on. So this is not an institution that stands up to any kind of scrutiny against the sort of high standards that we ought to expect of the public institutions. We have the Nolan principles you may or may not have heard of. They're talked about a lot in conjunction with Boris Johnson's government. Is that too fell short? Unlike the Royals, that government eventually fell. But when we see institutions falling well short, we should be able to hold them to account and throw the individuals out without tearing down the whole edifice. That is the point of democracy. But it is an unprincipled institution because we are Democrats, and we ought to have an institution that celebrates those values, values of equality and citizenship, and values of our place as citizens, as Ken was saying, not an institution that celebrates hereditary power and privilege, which is founded on medieval values which allow them to support and to extend slave trade and empire. Because they celebrate empire as part of their heritage, and it is not something we should be celebrating anymore. It is also dreadful for our constitution. Michael said that we exported the Westminster system. Yes, we did. But all those countries then took it and improved on it. Because Australia, it's not parliamentary sovereignty, it's popular sovereignty. They're sovereign through their constitution, and they have a much better version of it, as does Canada, New Zealand, and other countries. This is about changing our constitution, because ultimately the Crown concentrates a huge amount of power in the hands of government. It robs us of the opportunity to have an independent head of state who can guard our constitution, protect us against the excesses of government and politicians. And you'll hear in a moment from Ritchie, which is this, so I know you're going to say it again, which is that the monarchy acts as a constitutional long-stop, needs some kind of guard and protection. It does no such thing. It empowers and enables the power of politicians through the power of the Crown being handed to them. And we do not have an independent head of state. We have a puppet head of state who is there to do one thing only, which is to stay in one. We also have a head of state who would not vote for and would not win in an election. He would not vote with scrutiny. He would not stand here and debate me or anybody else in front of an audience. And he would not be able to face that kind of thing. And he would not be elected. He is not someone that you would vote for, and yet there he is, our head of state. He is our head of state. He certainly is not my king. Thank you.
For that fight thing, and now I invite the second speaker for side opposition. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last month, I saw a report that interested me enormously, and I think would interest you if you haven't seen it. So that is, who in the United States is respected as the most significant public figure. And it's Fitzwilliams. Charles comes fourth, but it is some feat in a country that is as divided as the United States is anymore. Some feat that 63% of Democrats and 65% of Republicans were in favor of Charles. Now, the monarchy, by all means, examine, question, but it is a fascinating institution that has survived over 1,000 years. That is no accident. If you're talking or considering for the good of the people, of course, in past centuries, there have been ups and downs of all sorts, but if still, I think, on a patriarchy, says, take three papers, Elizabeth I, you take Victoria, and you take Elizabeth II. Three absolutely amazing women who were all models. And indeed, Elizabeth II was someone who I felt embodied the soul of this nation. When in 1947, she made an oath to serve. She did it, I felt it. I'm sure many of you do. Superb. Every monk has their own style. But one thing seems to be absolutely sure because there have been points made about corruption and the way things are. One thing I think is very, very significant. If you look, for example, Prince of Wales, King Charles began Prince's Trust. Now that has helped over 1 million disadvantaged young people. It's remarkable. You remember 150 countries have adopted the war scheme, the Ursham Prize, which William has created. That too, I think, is very, very significant. And for all the institutions, ups and downs, Princess Diana, had she not been royal, would not have been able to use her special brand of magic the way she did. It's quite literally a fact, the way she reached out to HIV/AIDS sufferers, the way she was able to campaign against landmines. Truly remarkable. Of course, you can get royals who good and ones who are bad, but essentially, it is, I would suggest to you, our best use of soft power. You've just seen King Charles in Paris. It meant a great deal to the French, although, in fact, today, when the understand in German, gave soft power when post-Brexit, in my opinion, we certainly need it. Facts are, the monarchy is its or Britain's best use of it. And so far as the Commonwealth is concerned, I think it's absolutely pivotal the way the Queen nurtured the Commonwealth, and also the way that Charles, and one day I think William, will be its head. And the reason for that is this, that if you had a dictatorship state, you would have a dictatorship, and if you had a secretary general or bureaucrat, not that they were taking time, but also they wouldn't have the cachet, the amazing cachet of our royal family. Because what is so extraordinary, if you look at the Jubilees, if you look at the absolutely phenomenal celebrations, the weddings and so forth, is the interest internationally. When they talk about getting rid of money, people abroad must think they are truly, genuinely fair enough, but truly misguided, because in this institution, it isn't the power the monarchy has. What is significant is the power the monarchy denies to others, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Civil Service, Judiciary, Church, and the facts are that the world watches. Some of the ups and downs may well be strange, but essentially it does good, it helps our profile, its costs overall, in my opinion, are very reasonable, and in a world that's wild and whirling, as Shakespeare has said, you have a most extraordinary example with the monarchy, where Britain is unique when it comes to ceremonial, displays it brilliantly and with style. And I emphasize again, the world does take notice, and so much good is done by individual charities and working senior members of the royal family who are attached to these charities. They give them probity, they give them a profile that no other link would do. Ladies and gentlemen, please throw this motion out down the centuries. The monarchy has flourished.
just ask a little bit about where Ritchie got this nonsense about the way in which the world looks at our monarchy. Look at the number of countries that are in the Commonwealth that are in the process of deciding that really this is not something that can go on any longer. Let's just look at the role that our monarchy plays internationally. Who are the Queen's big chums? They came from Saudi Arabia. And we know what Saudi Arabia's image is like. You talk about places where you have happy monarchies. I was reminded of one, I didn't pass the first when you compared Morocco and Algeria. Many of you may have visited Morocco. Marrakesh is a lovely place, but that great big building at the side of the market in Marrakesh is where the people's fingernails are. They have an appalling record on human rights. They have for years defied the United Nations in their occupation of Western Sahara. But all of these things, Bahrain, Qatar, you mentioned the Prince's Trust, the money that has come from Qatar, a place with an appalling record on gay rights and other things. I don't know how you.
Regarding the Prince's Trust, firstly, an organization since 1975 that has helped over 1 million disadvantaged young people. I think that is something that should be applauded. With reference to the Commonwealth, I think you made that point. And if you want better results and better responses from government and Parliament, it is dreadful. And if you want better results and better responses from government and Parliament, then you have to disperse and distribute power more fairly. You have to put limits on the power of government, and you have to put more power in the hands of people. So if you want better responses to the economy, you want better responses to the environment, you want better responses to all the different issues, you need a better system that we have now. Because the system we have now, as in this joke many years ago when Gordon Brown was Prime Minister, he said, we have this principle of one man, one vote, and that one man is Gordon Brown. Because the Prime Minister has so much power. And so you want a better democracy, and you will then get better results. It's not going to be perfect, it's not going to be solve all the problems, but it will make solving those big problems and those big challenges easier if you have a more effective government. You are right, it isn't worth going through a trauma over this, because it's the settled opinion of most people in this country. It has been for many, many years. When I was a court correspondent, 88%. No politician in the Western world can command this level of support that poll after poll. Even today, 60% of the general population are in favour of monarchy. So you're bang on the money. Can I just say, because I'm talking about first, Cromwell thought about becoming king. He did. He considered it. He was going to be it. And had he done that, you would have been on his side. Okay. And also, George Washington, after the Revolution, 1776 in the United States, it was put to him seriously that he should replace King George with George Washington king. And he thought about it.
Thank you for that. We are going to get our next question from the audience. Let's go to you in the blue jumper. Yeah. Just wondering for the opposition, given that it is quite generally accepted fact that the royal family brings in a lot of money to the more than required, and given the fact that the president would also cost a very large amount of money in the travel costs that you mentioned earlier, which you think will be more economic helpful to the president will really knows doesn't have the same benefits or a monarchy that benefits more.
Yeah, well, that's an extremely good question. Interestingly, the New York Times, which actually hates this country, ran a big feature at the time of the coronation by one of their best feature writers, he said, he went down in Buckingham Palace, he felt like saying, God save the Queen. He was so much in favour of it. He made the very points about it pays for itself in terms of tourism and so on. So these are very, very important points. But what's important is our standing in the world, and also the continuity, the fact that we have to think there. America is going through 18 months of agony before it gets to a presidential election. You've noticed in this country, we have a 3-week election campaign, and if there's a change of government, one car goes to Buckingham Palace, and the Prime Minister renders their series office, and another car goes. There's a smooth turnover. Why does he always stand like I'm getting into the country?
The point is, think about the tourism. Let's just kill this one. And up to this weird poll inside, where William was supposedly one of the most respected people in Europe. The poll was absolute nonsense. They put a list of a whole bunch of unpopular politicians, and then they started. Zelensky. Americans do not care about William or how it was that.
We care about Zelensky.
Think about tourism and charity. There is absolutely no evidence whatsoever that the monarchy does anything beneficial for our tourism industry. None. And I have spoken. I have spoken to say the reverse. Brand finance report is garbage. No sources. It's literally brand finance report is paper thin. It provides no sources and no evidence. And their quote of £500 million figure for tourism is lifted directly from Visit Britain, which used it 12 years ago. They stopped using it when we pointed out it was nonsense. We then sat down with the heads of Visit Britain, and they agreed with us that they had no evidence that the monarchy is good for tourism. They just simply no evidence. And same with charity. A very detailed report was done on this a couple of years ago. Loyal patronage makes absolutely no difference to charity. And this is the point. The monarchy is not there to promote charity and to bring in tourism. And it is amoral to suggest that we should put up with a corrupt, undemocratic institution simply because it might make a bit of cash on the side. This is part of that constitution. That is what the measure upon which we can go.
Want to get through as many countries tonight as possible, so we go to our next question quite as far as that.
To the office, in the current situation in Ireland, imaginable subject. And while I myself belong in a word, surely you can see that I myself, the monarchy responsible for roughly 800 years of bloodshed in that country. How do you think our whole institution is responsible for suffer the acts and so much about the world, not the family?
There is no question, and I think that we raised that at the speech that was cast, where she said there were things that would not have been done, things that might very well have been done better. She began with 2 words in Irish, and indeed the Irish president said, wow, because this was a very, very significant visit that my colleagues pointed out. The reference to past centuries, yes, you're absolutely right, there have been terrible things happening in Ireland, but also during the protectorate of Cromwell, which also among and Westmore, with dreadful passages. But so far as Ireland and the relationship for recent is concerned, there was, of course, as you know, the apology for Bloody Sunday, and also there is the good crime in the Queen. Now, what was the Queen in the 21st century was that Sinn Féin initially opposed that visit. It was so successful that subsequently, 3 years later, when Presidents Michael Higgins and also on the same visit, was Department of Guinness Sinn Féin with him in white tie and Windsor Castle. So that shows a very positive spin on something that I agree has been deeply unhappy.
Thank you very much.
On the point about Ireland, I was slightly shocked by the comments earlier on about Ireland. I mean, monarchy is absolutely central to that English history in relation to Ireland. And of course, the crown was the symbol of part of that, or one side of that conflict in the 20th century as well. And as you suggested, has been instrumental, not just in Ireland, but around the world, in inflicting terrible crimes of empire and slavery on billions of people. And this is the problem with this institution, is it doesn't represent our best tradition. It represents our worst history. And we should get rid of it to have some tradition that instead represents our best traditions and our best values. And we should not hold dear or celebrate something which celebrates in turn empire and its awful past. And of course, Charles himself inherited an estimated £600 million from his mother, who would have inherited a lot of from her father, and all the way down the line to those monarchs who had personally invested in and supported slavery, which is why people now in and now ask for reparations directly from royal family.
It's quite simple. The majority, it's the several will majority expression in the ballot box, not the bullet, is to be part of the United Ireland or to be separate state. Then that will be enacted. That is the way the Westminster system works. It will work that way because that is what it's saying. Similarly, in Australia,
I really feel we have got to be clear and honest about Northern Ireland. The monarchy was never involved in trying to solve the situation in Northern Ireland until the politicians have done it. Now look, I'm here, I represent the Liverpool Republic. I'd like to say if you're going to give credit to one person, it's actually John Ritchie that actually opened up the political process. Her Majesty was never involved in it until the politicians decided that they had reached a point at which that was possible and productive. She was there doing the job that they set up for her. It was not solved by the Queen or by any other royal.
Thank you for that. Right, going to get to our next question now. Let's do it in pink.
You obviously spoke quite a bit about the royal family being a way of making sure that our democracy is held to a high standard and doesn't fall into dictatorship or corruption. And I'm interested in your opinion on the way that the royal family sets over laws that the monarchist would expect. So things like inheritance tax, but also you mentioned about Andrew not having to take trial for allegations. And when you mentioned about like politicians who support their own parties that would go against the monarchy, but are they also in similar positions where they are able to step over laws that apply to the average person? So the question would be just that, do you think that royal family can make sure that corruption doesn't occur within politics when it has stepped over laws that apply to the average person?
I think that the issue of corruption, of course, is absolutely no one can get it down by the way it is perfect family, and it's certainly far from perfect. He's not been found guilty of anything, but he has no role in nor will he in the future, I can assure you all. And so far as corruption in politics is concerned, well, of course, the royal family as we see it as the democratic laws and aspect of it, but also when you have
William civil list, and subsequently, Buckingham Palace in people furnished and
Okay, we were now getting from proposition.
yes, the settlement goes back to 2011 was George Osborne's idea to randomly link the society grant to the Crown Estate revenue. You might as well link it to the profits of McDonald's for the sense it makes. But the monarchy costs at least £345 million a year when you factor in all the things they don't want to mention in their reports. And it's not the overall cost. By the way, the Irish president, Michael D. Higgins, costs about £5 million. The monarchy is so expensive because of the corruption. And when I say corruption, you may know about the MP's expenses scandal in 2009. MPs were caught spending thousands of pounds on their own homes, and large numbers of them lost their seats, were forced to resign, and some of them were prosecuted and held to account. William spent £4.5 million of our money on his new home in Kensington Palace several years ago. He's now spending more money on other homes he has. He has, I think, 4 homes now. He spends our money on helicopter travel around the country. He spends our money on private jets. Charles does the same thing. The rest of the family do the same thing. Yesterday I was at the Oxford Circus, and the police motorcade came through, stopped all the traffic and all the people, and it was Princess Anne just going by her daily business from one place to another with a motorcade of metropolitan police officers. Absolutely pointless, absolute waste of money, and you know, why it is inflated to an enormous.
The issue of security is not a waste of money.
The police have been quite clear in the past. They have way too much security, more than they need. But you know, well, the head of state gets security, but the first ministers of the government don't get security. We've had 2 MPs murdered in the last 15 years. They don't get security. They're actually at risk. And the people who are the experts on this issue are well aware that the security is excessive.
Okay, thank you very much. That was very profile. Next question. We will go to take out that way.
Now, I'm a monarchist. I'm with you guys. Then Casey asked this question. If I would ever please go off, I'll be happy to join defending in a way. But I find my eyes sort of glaze over more and more as time goes on, because the monarch signed the law and bill just put in front of it really bad. As much as I wish it were the case that you were right, that the Constitution, over the last 100 or so years, they've signed into law every aspect, every bill that destroys the Constitution of this country. They signed into law the ability to get a veto. They signed into law everything that Blair put in front of them. So how can I, as a monarchist, maintain enthusiasm for an institution that isn't really actually doing what it's supposed to be? Surely we should be making a case for Charles I and not Charles III.
Okay.
And God's real as well.
Our previously clever unwritten constitution is based on convention, common law, statute law, and because of that, it's adaptable, it's fluid, it can react. In America, where I detect you may come from, they spent 18 years trying to change, to get an amendment to the Constitution, and then they bring in something like prohibition of alcohol, and they spent 12 years trying to get rid of it after they brought it in. So we are more creative in that way, and that's very, very, very important. And also, if I may, because you may have believed something the very yourself in telling us, Kensington Palace is a state property. Buckingham Palace is a state property. Windsor Castle is a state property. The monarch doesn't own any of those properties. The monarch principally owns, oh my goodness gracious, principally owns only Balmoral and Sandringham.
I very, very rarely will have, you're not the only person who has this mad idea that we should give a monarch actual power and we should celebrate the vicious, nasty piece of work that was Charles I. And so I'm not going to take your position particularly seriously with great.
I don't
So that's probably a good idea. And in terms of your question about how you can maintain enthusiasm for the monarchy, don't it is a fraud. And what they have told you about the check and balance thing, Charles does not put pen to paper. The process of giving royal assent does not involve him personally. It is all done in Parliament. So he is not there to do anything other than what he is told to do by the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister can exercise the head of state's power, the Crown power, his own power, government's power, and through various forms of patronage and whipping, Parliament's power. So we have a very, very centralised system with a very poor constitution that is only flexible in the hands of the government. And we have a monarch who denies us the opportunity to have an independent and effective justice.
We're going to take our next question from the audience.
So I come from Italy. So as you said before, we had the monarchy before during the war, and we didn't have it before because the people chose to have a republic. And the main idea, as you said, is that the republic tries to keep away corruption. And in my constitution, everyone should be taken care. But as we know, in reality, that's not true. So how do you know that by changing to a republic, there will be no corruption and everyone will be good?
There won't be no. There won't be. No one ever be. The point of democracy is that when there is corruption, you can deal with it. Now, I can't talk to the strength of Italians in face of corruption, but a whole bunch of other issues, not just economy. But the point is you will not deal with corruption by having a monarchy. That is not. This is about making it easier to deal with issues, not solving all of them.
If I can just add to that, because I think the point you raise actually relates to another question that's already been asked. I want to see a head of state that is there to protect the Constitution. Now there are instances that have come up. There was the debates over Brexit. There was the debate over whether Boris Johnson could actually end the parliamentary so that he didn't need to face some debates. All of these things came up. The Queen, who was the monarch at the time, was not in a position to support the Queen. They did not stop. And there's a sense in which the Queen did not have the authority. She didn't have the legitimacy. You're not some of the constitution she had the power to do, but because she was not, because she did not have a democratic mandate, it was difficult for her to actually enforce the constitution.
What happened actually is that the Queen, so to speak, let court people that this was when Johnson put back is what happens. And the Queen's powers, the reserve powers, the fact that they are there and against extreme circumstances like that could be used. It's not made to say anything. And with reference to the business of corruption, it's all very well for the legal politics, but quite frankly, if we didn't have the money, what they would face it with, that very best is so sketchy. And if it involves proportional representation, which I suspect would, we have no view of the cost of privacy of that here. But when I remind them that the 2011, it was thrown out 2-1 in a
Okay, thank you. We're going to take one more question now. I can ask both sides to have a summary speeches. Let's go to the thread directly.
Well, there are more than that. Canada and Australia. Looks like public less that wasn't very blind and Republicans
Interesting. It's interesting. Let me just tell you an anecdote. I was in the University of South Australia in Adelaide. The degree ceremony, and the Queen was giving out the degrees. and there was a hiatus in the proceedings, and at the back, a boy shouted, "Long live the Republic of Australia!" And my microphone picked up what the Duke of Edinburgh said. He said, "Sounds so good indeed." And I put that on the air in Australia and here, because it's a misconception. What the Queen was always concerned about was that the Commonwealth should prosper. Whether countries became republics or not, she would push them on her way. Oh my goodness gracious. Don't you want to hear the truth?
I'm enjoying the power I have. Stand up.
I just give way to ignorance.
Slide, that's nice, because this slide, I mean, it's complete fantasy. If you want to study the Constitution, do not understand it. It doesn't work like that at all. As for the Australian anecdotes, let me tell you that in 1975, the Governor General sacked the Prime Minister in what was effectively a constitutional coup. He did not have the authority to do it, particularly when the Prime Minister went back to the Parliament, and Parliament was very clear that they wanted to beat the Prime Minister, and the Governor General refused to reverse his decision. And he claimed, and the palace allowed him to claim, that the palace had no knowledge of that. We now know, as a result of a 10-year fight from the academic general, that the Queen was well aware, as was Prince Charles, in the lead up for 6 months, that that was the intention of the Governor General to sack the Prime Minister, the elected Prime Minister, who had the majority support of the lower house. In certain circumstances, that's what he did. And not true. And the Queen fought tooth and nail not to have those papers protected under the guise that they were put in writing.
Just to remind you that there was an election called after that, and the general position was vindicated by the election. We also had, of course, and you will have the first, you were in Australia in the time, in 1999, and everyone was convinced, or seemed convinced, that Australia would become a republic. It's had every right to believe that we wish it all to happen. But the referendum and also majority of the states, every single state saying with the money, and that is still what might happen in the future.
Thank you, Critical. Would you like to?
I mean, the Australian referendum was poorly run, and it was an alternative. They were given an alternative to design effectively by a Marxist Prime Minister. People were not keen on, and it got defeated. But I mean, the support for the monarchy in Australia has been pretty high ever since. What I said about dismissal was quite accurate. I don't know why Ritchie didn't happen. This is all very clearly documented and very clearly explained in numerous books and contracts.
Okay, thank you very much. Time is up for the audience Q&A. So a round of applause for that. Please help on both sides make a summary. We'll start by the opposition. Here.
My colleagues have been here for an hour and I haven't mentioned my book out. Abolish the Monarchy, why we should and we will, because we will, support its dropping sharply. Now, I know the other side will say whatever they want to say, they don't worry too much about facts and evidence, but let me just say that we have been rather distracted with dark notions of Tony Blair being Prime Minister, whilst no one wants him. In one minute, it's like, oh, we're going to get Tony Blair, and everyone will hate him. How the hell does he win an election if everyone's going to hate him? Then it's like, oh, we're going to get this powerful, corrupt president like Nixon or Trump. No one is suggesting having a US-style system. No one. That's not on the table. Then we get this bizarre idea that these royals that are amazingly loved around the world, despite the evidence that most of the world simply aren't interested, and they just brush aside all the charges of corruption and abuse of public money. If a public official spends £20 of our money on themselves, they should be pulled up for it. They spend millions of pounds, and everyone excuses. But what this is actually about is about you. It's about your rights as citizens to choose your head of state and to have a constitution that properly balances power between government, parliament, and people. And it's about choose your head of state. And it could be you in the future who is that. Because you can also stand and say, yes, actually, I think I can do that job well. Will you vote? That's democracy. That is a good thing. And to suggest that it's better instead to bow our heads to a monarch who did not bother to ask us whether he could be our head of state, and he simply demanded secrecy, demanded exemptions from laws, demanded more money, and demands this, that, the other, and then demands a massive parade, and says nothing, by the way, says nothing, not one comment in defense of the rights of the people, when people are arrested on that day, in his name, to defend his ridiculous parade. He hasn't said a single thing. He raises protection of our constitution and our rights and our way of life. Doesn't exist. He's not interested. He's not interested in you. He's only interested in his own position. And it is not a head of state you would vote for if there was an election, and it is not an institution you should vote for when there's a referendum. Thank you.
Subsequently pursued and regarded very highly throughout the world. And I would urge, bearing that in mind and bearing the late Queen in mind, and the history of the monarchy as a whole, to throw out a motion which is short-term, not thought through, and frankly deserves the dustbin that it was sent to. I would quote this lady. Thank you for sending it. I shall lose no time in reading it.
Now we will be taking our final vote of the evening. You were on the fence earlier, it's time to get off it, we've got to vote side to side. We've had 90 minutes now to speak with fierce debate. So let's start with those in favour of the motion, the ayes, please. Okay, so we will announce the results in a moment. I'd like to thank our speakers for joining us tonight, and thank you to you guys too for joining us. We will be heading up to the Ram Student Bar in just a moment to continue the discussion on speakers joining us. Do also check out brand new for this year, the Debcast in partnership with Expression FM and Student Radio. Do check that out on Post Space. Analysis are fantastic, comes off the top annually. Speaking to members during the time out around as well, if you want to be involved in that student council. I'd like to also thank our sponsors tonight, the Free Speech Union, with their team of talent program representing open debate in the next week, we'll be here at the same time, same place, with the motion 6 hours blue, social and network. Short before speakers will be joined by Sebastian Critic, the former investment banker and conservative chair. And for the opposition, we will be joined by Aaron Bastani, the co-founder of the left-wing publication, Navarra Media. So that's the forward to next week, same venue, same time. So do join us for that. Now, the moment we've all been waiting for, no, not the result, that is the winner of the bottle of wine. I am going to give that to the lady in the front, in the white contact, asking about corruption, and that no change. Now, finally,